There are 12 mandatory provisions and 11 optional provisions in a standard health insurance policy. To distinguish between the two types of provisions, think of the mandatory ones as those that primarily protect the insured, and the optional ones as those that protect the insurers. There are time frames associated with many of these provisions, like grace periods. Because insurance is primarily regulated by the individual states, there will be differences as to these time frames depending on each state. For that reason, we'll detail state-specific time frames in your laws and rules section of the course. As you study the provisions, clauses, and riders in the lesson, make sure to concentrate on the concepts behind the material. In addition to knowing the time frames related to the provisions, focus on understanding the purpose of the provision as well as how it's applied. For example, it's not only important to know how long a right to examine or free look period is, it's equally important to know what a free look period is and when it applies. All provisions, whether mandatory or optional, must follow the requirements laid out by the law. Statutes provide specific language as to how the policy must read, and many provide timeframes that must be adhered to by the carrier as well. These are considered minimum timeframes. For example, let's say a particular statute requires that the policy provide the insured with 15 days to complete a task, such as filing a form. The language within a particular company's policy can always be more beneficial to an insured, but never more restrictive than the law allows. For instance, they could allow a 20-day period to file a form, as that is more beneficial for the insured. So, the insurance company could not state that the form must be filled within 10 days, as this is more restrictive than the law allows. After we cover these provisions, we'll cover some other policy clauses and riders to round out the topic. From there, we'll look at the riders of a health insurance policy, including multiple indemnity riders and how they affect the policy. Finally, we'll finish with the rights of renewability, going over policies such as guaranteed renewable, conditionally renewable, and cancelable. We have a lot to cover, so let's begin.